Good morning, students. I hope all of you are well at home. So today our topic. Today we will discuss about the history. Third chapter, the first phase of Indian national movement. So before we will discuss about the first phase of Indian national movements, you should know or you have to know the history of Indian national movements is divided into three phases. So number one, the first phase of Indian national movements that between 1885 to 1905 or 1907 somewhere written, because this period of Indian national movement was dominated by a group of Congress leaders, and they were popularly known as the early nationalists. So that is why this first phase of Indian national movement is also popularly known as the early nationalist phase. Next, from 1907 to 1916, that period was dominated by the another group of Congress leaders. They were known as the assertive leaders, and that phase was popularly known as the assertive phase or second phase of Indian national movements. Next is third phase from 1917 to 1947. That period was dominated by Mahatma Gandhi, and that period was popularly known as the Gandhian era. So today we will discuss about the first phase of Indian national movement. So let's start. So I already mentioned this 20 years from 1885 to 1885 to 1905 or 7. This period was dominated by some of the group of leaders, Congress leaders, and they are popularly known as early nationalists. Which these members of these groups were drawn from the educated middle class, they consisting the professionals, then the lawyers, barristers, teachers, officials, and they drew their inspiration from the Western thought because many of them educated in England. And so that is why they had a faith. They believed British will bring a lot of welfare in the country. So some of the prominent leader, early nationalist leaders like Dadabhai Naoroji, Umesh Chandra Banerjee, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, as well as P.R. Naidu, Subramaniam Iyer, as well so these are the important leaders, early nationalist leaders. Now next is the early nationalist leaders believe that leaders who was the Congress, who led the Congress and the nationalist movements in its initial years, and they are the staunch believer of the open-minded and the moderate politics. They believed in the loyalty to the British crown. But these early nationalist leaders followed the methods to achieve their objectives. That method was constitutional agitation methods. They also felt that they didn't ask their objective immediately. Why? Why? Because they knew very well if they ask their objectives immediately, British may suppress their activity. So that is why they followed a gradual process to achieve their goal. So now we will see the beliefs of the early nationalist. Number one, already mentioned that early nationalists had a faith in the British sense of justice, fair play, honesty. Next is number two. Number two, it was their hope that the British would grant home rule to India. Next is number three. They believed that British rule had many benefits, like they removed some of the social evils like sati, female infanticide, child marriage, etc. Next is number four. Another one beliefs of the early nationalist about British. They said that the main obstacle for India's backwardness, that is due to the Indian social and economic backwardness. So they said that the main obstacle in India's progress was the social and the economic backwardness of the Indians, not the British colonial rule. So these are the main beliefs of early nationalists. Now we will see the demands of the early nationalists. The early nationalists made demands, and the demands were divided into some categories like constitutional demand, economic demands, administrative demands, and defense of the civil rights. So first we will see the constitutional demands. What are the demands they made in constitutional sphere? Number one, abolitions of India Council. Number two, expansion of the Indian Legislative Council and the Legislative Assembly in both center as well as the provinces. Next is number three, increase the members of Indians by including some of the members those who are elected by the local bodies like Chamber of Commerce, universities. Next, number four, by beginning of the 20th century, they made a demand for Swarajya or self-government within the British Empire. Next, number five, another one demands like adequate representations of Indian in the executive councils of Viceroy and those of governors. Next is economic demands. What are the economic demands made by the early nationalists? Number one, reduction in the land revenue and protections of the peasants from unjust demands of the jamindars, landlords. Next is number two. Number two, reduction in the expenditure on the army and money saved that should be used for health and education purpose. Next is number three. Number three, availability of cheap credit to the peasant through the agricultural bank. Number four, an inquiry into India's growing poverty. Number five, developments of banking, irrigations, medical, health facilities, etc. Next is number three. Number three is the administrative demands of the early nationalists. So in administrative sphere also the early nationalists made some demands like number one, demand for the Indianizations of civil service examination, and that should be simultaneously conducted in England as well as in India. Number two, the repeals of the Arms Act and Vernacular Press Act, License Act. Next is number three, improvements of the police system to make it honest, efficient as well as popular. Next is number four, increase in the powers of the local bodies, reductions the control over them. Next is number five, spread of primary education among all. So these are the demands in administrative sphere. Now we will see how the early nationalists defend the civil rights. So number one, removal of the restriction imposed over the freedom of press as well as speech. Next, number two, abolitions of preventive detention. Next, restoration of individual liberties. Next, number three is restorations of the right to assemble as well as form association. So now, next, we will see the methods. The methods followed by the early nationalists, I already mentioned that the method that followed by the early nationalists that was popularly known as the constitutional agitation methods. And to achieve their objectives, they follow two sets of methods. One is the first sets of methods and second sets of methods, but different sets of methods had a different objectives. So first sets of methods. First sets of methods, main objective was to educate the Indian people in modern politics, to arouse the national political consciousness and to create a united public opinion. So to achieve these objectives, they followed the methods. Number one, they held meetings and where the speeches were made and resolution for public demands were passed. Next is number two. Number two, they used the press to criticize the government policies. Number three, they sent a memorandums as well as to the governments and the officials as well as the members to the British Parliament. Now, so these are the first sets of methods. Now, second sets of methods, main objective was to influence the British government and the people, British public, to influence the British governments and the British public. So to achieve this objective, they followed some methods. Like number one, they used 3 P's: prayer, protest, and petitions. Next is number two, a British committee of Indian National Congress was set up in London in 1889, which published a weekly journal India to present the India's case before the British public. Next, number three, the deputations of India or Indian leaders were sent to the Britain, and these political leaders also carried on active propaganda in Britain. Example like Dadabhai Naoroji. Now, next is the achievements of the early nationalists. So the early nationalists represented the most progressive force of the time, and they made some of the contribution in the India's freedom struggle movements. So number one, the early nationalists created the national awakening among the people that they belong to a common country. Next is number two, the early nationalists trained people. The early nationalists trained people in the politics by popularizing the ideas of democracy, civil liberties, equality, secularism, etc. Number three, their political and the economic programs established the truth that British must rule according to the interest of Indians. Number four, the early nationalists did the pioneering work by exposing the true rule of the British, a true nature of the British. Very simply, early nationalists exposed the true nature of the British rule in India. So these are the important achievements of the early nationalist leaders. Now, next we will see the contribution of important or prominent leaders. So first, we will discuss about Dadabhai Naoroji. So Dadabhai Naoroji was one of the prominent early nationalist leaders, and he was popularly known as the Grand Old Man of India. He was born in a Parsi family in Mumbai. Then next is he founded the Bombay Association, and he edited the newspaper that was known as Rastgaptar. He started a magazine that named Dharma Mark Darsak, and he started movements against the Vernacular Press Act as well as atrocity treatments of the poor peasant by the Jamindars. Now let's see his contribution. So three contribution here we will discuss. So first is India's unofficial ambassador. Next, role in the Congress, and then they expose the economic ills of Indians. So first is the India's unofficial ambassador. So Dadabhai Naoroji, when he stayed in England, he looked upon as an India's unofficial ambassador and fighting for the cause of the country. And in 1865, he founded the London India Society in collaboration with the Banerjee, Umesh Chandra Banerjee, to publish the grievances of Indians, and he was the first Indian to become the member of the British House of Commons or lower house. And when he was the member of the British Parliament, then he brought to notice the House the important matters related to the Indians. And so due to his efforts, the House, in favor of the holding the ICS examinations to India as well as in England, that first time passed. And in 1866, he founded an association that was known as East India Association in London. Why? That association he founded to present the India's problem in front of the British Parliament as well as the British people, because he believed that, because he was an early nationalist, so he had a faith on the British sense of justice. So if he placed the India's problem in front of the British people, maybe solve the India's problem. So second contribution is the role in the Congress. So Dadabhai Naoroji played a very important role in the Congress, and it took active part in the foundations of the Indian National Congress when Indian National Congress was founded in 1885, and he presided over the Congress session three times in 1886, 1893, another one in 1906. And when he was the president of the Congress session, and some of the important decisions or resolutions were passed like self-government, boycott, Swadeshi, national educations, all this. Next, third contribution of Dadabhai Naoroji. Third contribution is he exposed the economic ills of India. That means, as an economic thinker, he came to conclusion that the root cause for the economic decline or ills of the Indian, that is due to British economic policy. So he explained how the India's wealth being drained to Britain in his book the poverty and un-British rule in India in train of wealth theory. So the public, there he explained how the India's wealth being drained from India to Britain through various ways. Next, now we will discuss about another one prominent early nationalist, Gopal Krishna Gokhale. So Gopal Krishna Gokhale, he was born at Kolhapur and he was the professor of history and economics at Fergusson College. So he joined Congress a little bit later, but he presided over the Congress session in 1905. Now, Gokhale's contribution, first point, the pursuit of the British for reforms. Gokhale favored the use of constitutional means to achieve his goals and he raised his voice whenever necessary. Otherwise, in some cases, he supported the British policies. So, when he raised his voice, number one, incurring the huge expenditure on the British army. Number two, he raised his voice or he opposed the adapting policies of the racial discrimination in appointing to the higher post. Number three, he imposing when the British imposed the production tax over the cotton. Then also he opposed that. Then he made a strong plea for the reform of the legislative councils as well as the separations of the judiciary from executive. So number one, he played an important role in the passage of the parliamentary reforms. Number two, during his visit to England, he tried to pursue the British statements not to give effect to the partition of Bengal. Next is number three, he also served as a member of the Indian Public Service Commission and urged it to increase the share of Indians in the higher post. Next is number two, second contribution, the Servants of India Society. Servants of India Society. Gokhale set up the Servants of India Society in 1905 and the main aim of the society was to train the national leaders who would sacrifice or dedicate themselves for the sake of the country or for the service of the country. And some of the important members of the Servants of India Society were Srinivas Sastry, Hidayanath, Kunjru, etc. Next, third point, the role as a member of the Imperial Legislative Council. What role he played as a member of the Imperial Legislative Council? Number one, in 1902, Gokhale became the member of the Imperial Legislative Council and he played the council for reduction in the salt tax. Number two, his relentless effort led to the reduction in the toll tax. Number three, he impressed upon the government to reduce the land revenue. Number four, being an economist, he demanded the racial change or radical change or changes in the physical policy and the better job for the educated Indians. So these are the demands he made. He also proposed the government should impose more tax over the rich than the poor. Next, another one leader, prominent leader, the Surendranath Banerjee. So another one prominent leader, Surendranath Banerjee. Surendranath Banerjee was a nationalist leader, popular journalist, as well as dedicated educationist. So he advocated the use of constitutional methods for attainments the India's goal or objectives, and his famous saying was, opposition where necessary and cooperation where possible. So his contribution first established the Indian Association. In 1876, last chapter also we discussed, in 1876, Surendranath Banerjee established the East Indian Association. Why? Its aim were to educate the people and to organize a strong political opinion in the country and arouse the political consciousness among the people as well as form unity. Next is number two. His second contribution is he created an all India political organization. So in order to create an all India political organization, Surendranath Banerjee established the Indian National Conference in 1883, and its aim and objectives purpose was same or similar to the Indian National Congress. So when Indian National Congress was founded in 1885 and next year in 1886 that merged with Indian National Congress, and he presided over the National Congress session twice, in 1902, another one in 1895. Now, next point is the political ideas. Well, Banerjee edited the newspaper Bengali, which served as the medium for mobilizing the public opinions, as well as his book, the name Nation in the Making, gives an account of his political concern and his view regarding the self-government. Banerjee also started an agitation against some of the actions of the British, like he opposed the License Act, Arms Act, Vernacular Press Act, as well as lowering the age for civil service examination from 21 to 19 years. That's it. Okay, student, I hope all of you understand very well. So thank you. See you on next day.